Hey everybody, Kelly here. So this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a little while, but I've had other projects lined up, so I kind of put it on the back burner. And anyhow, these are what's called, well, they're probably off of camera, some of them. These are what's called Vegas strips. So a lot of my viewers probably know So Yeah. And So Yeah is a fabric store out of Las Vegas. And so they have recently started doing what they call Vegas strips. So these are 6.5 inches wide. Actually, you know what? All of a sudden, let me double check myself. Yes, 6.5 inches wide. And they are 20 strips per pack, I believe. This one was 20. Let me count. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, okay, so I won't bother counting. But they should be 20 strips per pack, 6.5 inches wide. And so one of the things that I like about these, and I haven't actually, I think I did one top that I might not have shown you guys, but I don't have it anymore, so I can't show it. But basically, what I like about these is the fact that if you get a 2.5 inch jelly roll, something like this would actually cut about like that. So the Vegas strips that I've got so far are not great. That's like about the only really good example of that. The rest of these are such a fine print that they would come out just fine in a jelly roll. And every one that I have is actually flowers and dots and that. So most of the examples that I have here are not necessarily great examples of why a wider fabric is better. But this particular strip right here in this set is actually a pretty good example. It's still very pretty. It's just that you're not getting the full effect of that particular strip of fabric because it's a wide flower. And so I like that. I like the fact that it's a little bit wider. I can see some of the detail that the designer put into this particular piece of fabric, but also it is still cut small enough that I'm able to get a variety of different strips and be able to put together a quilt top out of just this bundle right here without really even needing to add anything to it. So it kind of has a slightly controlled, scrappy kind of feel to me. So yeah, so I like that about it. So I am actually going to do a very simple project today. And in fact, I'm probably going to stop right here and bring you back to work on that. You know what? I'm kind of thinking on the fly here, so I think I'm actually going to go ahead and open this. Sorry, you're going to hear the sound, but I'm going to go ahead and open this and show you these fabrics just a little bit more, and then I will tell you what the plan is for today. It's not going to be a pattern per se. It's just going to be a very simple technique more than anything. And then I'll come back with the final quilt. So I will say their cutter is just a little bit, I'm going to have some edges here. This may have been like one of the first ones that they actually did, so I'm not 100% sure, but so it's not real smooth on the edges. You're going to have some, but you know what, most jelly rolls do too. So, but yeah, 20 prints here. 26.5 inch prints. So what I am going to do is actually take, and they are with the fabric, so get all of those with the fabric, so they should each be somewhere around 40 or 42 inches. Let's do a check here. Yeah, so they're going to be at least 40, probably 42, but at least 40 inches for each strip. And so I think the technique that I'm going to use is going to be really simple. And so I have all kinds of patterns in my mind for these. I know Soya is actually coming up with some patterns for them. They've got some free patterns already on their site. And so, yeah, so there's lots of good options. You can also cut these up. I mean, if you wanted to do 2.5 inch strip project, it's pretty simple. You just would take this and cut out your 2.5 inch strips. You know, obviously you can make a jelly roll out of this and still have 1.5 inches of fabric from each of these pieces. So that's awesome. A little bit extra of a scrappy project. One of the things that I might do is actually go ahead and cut a 6.5 inch piece out of each strip. Sorry, I was losing my words there for a second. I may go ahead and cut a 6.5 inch piece out of each strip and set those aside because I would like to do a scrappy project from this particular fabric line as well. And I think that'll be kind of neat to be able to basically, I feel like I can get 2 quilt tops out of this one set right here. So we're going to give it a try. So yes, I think I will do that. I'll cut at least one 6.5 inch block out of each strip and set that aside for another project. So that would give me, what, 26.5 inch squares. That would, at the very least, that would be a small wall hanging / maybe baby quilt type thing. Yeah. And I actually have a couple other ideas. I would like to make a bag out of this fabric line right here. It's a very, very pretty spring fabric line. So, yeah, so that's where we're going to start. We're going to cut 6.5 inch squares out of each strip, and then I'm going to take the strip set and line up 2 strips together and just create a diagonal and make a strip line and sew them all together and make a quilt top. It's going to be very quick, very easy. I will come back with maybe 1 or 2 more steps before I show you the actual final quilt. Alright, let's see how nice a project we can come up with for this. It's definitely some nice fabrics and really going to show off the fabrics pretty well, having a good size strip to them. Alright, see if I can get 2 projects out of this one right here. Alright, so I'm cutting off my 6.5 inch squares here to set them aside to work on a second project. I don't know why I do that. Sometimes I bounce back and forth when I cut, and don't ask me why. I just can't seem to break myself of the habit. But anyhow, there's 26.5 inch squares. So that alone would make a small baby quilt, or a wall hanging, or a bag, maybe 2 bags. Alright, so I took just a moment and laid out my strips so that I was kind of checking to make sure that I had my colors and strip patterns in good order. So like the size of the pattern. Didn't want to have 2 small pieces next to each other and then have 2 big old flower pieces next to each other. So I just kind of took a moment and quickly went through that and did that. And then now I'm actually going to take this first row and I'm going to sew on the diagonal, and then I'm going to flip it around and sew the half square triangle as well. And then I'll cut down the middle of the seam, or down between the 2 seams, and I'll have my scrap piece and I'll have my strip. And then the next strip, what I plan to do is actually take it, and instead of lining it up at the top of this piece, I'll actually line this piece up at the bottom. and then actually sew along here as a half square, and make a half square triangle as well. And that way my top strip will have a diagonal going like this, and my second strip will have a diagonal going this direction. So so this way, and then the next one will have a diagonal going this way. And so each of my 10 rows are going to be slightly offset as far as the diagonal, and they're going to go down the center of the quilt unless I decide to cut it to a different width, which I might do. Like I said, we're not really following a specific pattern, just an idea that I have in my mind, and doing this nice and quick and easy and still making something unique. All right, I actually am going to change my foot here first too. All right, I'm going to cut down my half square triangle cutoffs to 5.5 inches square. I'm going to set those aside with my 6.5 inch squares that I already cut. So the pieces that I already cut off the strips. And I'm going to set these aside, and I will probably finish the second project next week. And I would tell you what it's going to be, but I'm still trying to narrow it down to a couple of things that I would like to make out of what's left of this Vegas strip. I've had a thought to do a bag that the quilt could actually fit in. Don't know that I'm necessarily going to do that. I've had a thought to make some small project bags out of it. Don't know if I'm necessarily going to do that. I've had a thought that it should be enough to make a small lap quilt. I may need to add some more fabric in if I choose to do that. So I'm not exactly certain if I'll do that or not. I kind of thought maybe I would do, maybe if I did the bag for the quilt to go in for a gift, that I might actually do the project bags as well. Because I have too much scraps here for just doing a bag that'll fit the quilt, and too much scraps for just doing a couple of project bags. But like I said, if I try to do a lap quilt, I probably will have to add a little bit of fabric to it, which is fine, I could do that. But anyhow, I'm going to set these aside, and we'll come back next week after I've decided what to do with them. So at this point, each of my odd strips has a diagonal facing this direction, and each of my even strips has a diagonal going that direction. So the width of my strips is about 66 inches long, and the length of the quilt top when I sew all the strips together is only going to be about 60 inches. So I don't necessarily want to have to match up the points in this easy quick quilt. So I actually am going to cut 6.5 inch square off of the end of each of my odd strips. I'm going to cut it off the left side of each of my odd strips and off the right side of each of my even strips. I'm going to do that really quickly, and then I will be able to sew my strips together and not have to match up the points here. Alright, so there's my Sew Yeah Vegas strip quilt. Easy peasy, done in 3 cuts. So first cut, 6.5 inch squares off of the end of each strip, all 20 of them in the set. And then second cut, half square triangles cut off when we made the diagonals on sewing the 2 strips together. Third cut was actually cutting 6.5 inch square off of each row. Let's put it that way. So it was supposed to be originally going to be 6.5 inch squares off of the left hand side of the odd strips, and 6.5 off the right hand side of the even strips. Actually, I have that in reverse. Yes, it was going to be off the left and then off the right, and it has ended up off the right and off the left. There's gremlins in this house, and my strips got out of order. And so when I finally went to sew them together, I kind of repositioned them a little bit. So I originally did not have, I had flowers, 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 and so some things got out of order, but I still really like I really like the design, so I just went ahead and left it this way. And so anyhow, that third cut, I took the strips, or the squares, and sewed them together and put them on the top, just to give this quilt a little bit more length. So this particular Vegas strip pack had 20 strips in it. Some of them have 19, some have 24. They're kind of starting this program, so it just depends, honestly. But most of them will be right around 20 or 22. And so this particular one had 20. So I was able to break it up into sets of 10 and sew a 10 strip quilt, which made it 6.5 inches times 10 plus take away the seam, blah blah blah. It was about 60 inches. And so I'm fairly tall, not really, 5'7" is not that tall, but average height, and like to have a little bit of length to my lap quilts even. So I went ahead and just sewed the strip on the top, and I think it gives it a little bit of character at the top. So, and yeah, I love the colors, love the springiness of it, and we'll see what I can come up with for the scrap pieces here. And join me next week. I should have that done. I've already got an idea, and yeah, should have that done. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. And maybe I'll have this quilt done. Probably not. Alright, thanks for watching.